So online higher education, I mean, the growth globally has just been massive, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. If you just look at the figures, say, for Australia, between 2010 and 2021, that kind of explosion is happening everywhere.
But it brings this huge challenge, right? As things scale up, institutions get, well, kind of obsessed with metrics.
Exactly. They're asking, okay, how do we measure if students are actually succeeding, if they're engaged, when all we can really see are, clicks, page views, maybe posts on a discussion board?
Yeah. And that's the central thing we want to unpack for you today. How do you measure real intellectual engagement when the student isn't physically there?
Because we all know instinctively that clicking submit on some multiple choice quiz
Mhm.
or posting a quick required comment on a forum, well, that's not the same as really getting into the material, is it?
Not at all. So our mission today is to look past those surface things. We're doing a deep dive into a really interesting study. It used flow theory, a psychological framework.
That's right. To explore the internal experience. What's actually going on inside the student's head when they're engaged in online university study.
So we're shifting from just looking at what students do, the observable stuff, to understanding that feeling of optimal enjoyment while learning.
Yeah, the why.
Hmm.
It's about the quality of that experience, not just counting mouse clicks or login times.
And this theory, flow, it comes from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, doesn't it? He coined the term when he was studying, well, happiness, basically.
Yeah.
What makes an activity genuinely positive?
It's that state of consciousness characterized by really deep concentration, total absorption.
It's like the sweet spot where what you're doing and your awareness of doing it just kind of merge.
Precisely. Because the challenge of what you're doing perfectly matches your skill level. Not too hard, not too easy.
And there are these conditions, right? Universal things needed to get into that state.
Clear goals are important. Getting immediate feedback on how you're doing.
Just a control, too. And losing track of time, forgetting yourself.
And crucially, what he called the autotelic experience.
Autotelic. Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It essentially means the activity is its own reward. It's intrinsically rewarding. You're doing it for the sheer enjoyment of the process itself, not, just for the grade or the qualification at the end.
We'll definitely come back to how that links to things like assessment later.
For sure.
So this study we looked at, it gathered some really rich data. 81 students using reflections, journals, interviews, really detailed stuff.
And they did confirm that, yes, flow links positively to engagement across the board, cognitive, emotional, behavioral, all three.
And this is the first really big insight. Flow seems to be incredibly elusive, rare even.
That's the kicker, isn't it? Despite online learning offering, potential for deep focus away from campus distractions, only 15 people out of the whole group actually reported getting into this state of flow while studying.
Wow, only 15 out of 81.
Yeah, it's a rare and precious mental state, it seems.
Okay, so let's start there. This rarity, this hidden nature of deep engagement. You just said universities rely on metrics like, watching lecture videos or posting on the discussion board, the DB.
Right. The visible stuff.
But the study found something that kind of blows that up, didn't it? Why those metrics might be almost worthless for measuring high engagement.
It did. They found that the students who did report experiencing flow, well, they were often pretty quiet on the DB. Passive users, you could say.
Passive users. So they weren't doing the required posting and interacting?
Not necessarily, or at least not much. They'd log in, maybe download materials, do the reading, think deeply, reflect. But they weren't engaging in that observable, sometimes mandatory social clicking that the systems track.
That is a massive problem for institutions, isn't it?
Huge.
If universities are basing their success metrics or funding or even how they design courses on DB activity or how often someone logs in, they could be completely misreading their most deeply engaged students.
Exactly. The optimal learning, the real absorption, is happening completely out of view from university systems or tutors, as the study puts it.
The LMS, the learning management system, the software platform, it just sees clicks and time online.
It sees movement. It can't see deep thought. It can't register reflection or focus reading.
Yeah.
That kind of intense cognitive processing just looks like, well, inactivity to the system.
So flow gives us this much more holistic view of engagement, doesn't it? It's not just ticking boxes.
Right. It covers all three dimensions at once. Cognitive, your attention, your persistence; emotional, your interest, feeling good about it; and behavioral, putting in high effort.
And if you're in flow, you've got all three, whether or not you clicked like on someone's forum post that week.
Precisely. So given the LMS seems a bit blind to this deep state, let's shift focus. Let's look at the students themselves.
Okay.
What was it about these rare individuals who did manage to achieve flow? The study calls these the internal stimuli.
Right, factors you can't just teach or force, but they strongly predict whether someone experiences flow.
And when the researchers analyzed who these flow achievers were, a pretty clear profile emerged.
What did it look like?
They are typically postgraduate students, so they already had experience with higher education.
Okay, that makes sense.
And critically, they were usually already working, employed in the same field they were studying.
Ah, so direct relevance.
Exactly. That immediately helps with that challenge skill balance needed for flow. If you're working in the field, the course content isn't just abstract, it has immediate relevance.
And your prior knowledge, your experience, means the coursework is likely to be challenging in the right way, not completely overwhelming.
Right, so the students best set up for this optimal state were often already, in a sense, veterans in the subject area.
That really changes how you think about who thrives in online learning, doesn't it? The study had a great example, didn't it? Someone working as an education assistant.
Yeah, level 3 education assistant, and they specifically said the course content was heavily related to what I do for work.
Which gives you that instant connection, that relevance, and probably helps control attention too, I imagine.
Absolutely, and that links straight into self-direction. These students were really autonomous. They took
They
ownership.
knew what they needed.
Yeah, and their self-awareness was striking.
Mm.
They were almost ruthless about filtering content to maintain the conditions for flow.
Ruthless. How so?
Well, one student commented something like, I will, within 15 seconds of watching a video, know if it's going to be of value or not.
Wow, 15 seconds. That's incredible focus.
It's real self-discipline, isn't it?
Yeah.
They weren't just passively consuming everything thrown at them. They were actively screening it.
Because sustained selective attention is absolutely fundamental for flow.
Yeah.
You just can't get absorbed if your focus is fragmented.
No way. And on top of that, these students had this interesting dual motivation.
Dual motivation.
Yeah, both intrinsic and extrinsic. They had a genuine love for the subject. One described getting goosebumps, learning new theories, real passion.
Okay, that's the intrinsic part.
But they were also very aware of the extrinsic side, Sigrid. Future job prospects, career advancement. That was definitely a driver too.
So the interest, the prior experience, already working in the field, it all builds up.
It seems to contribute to higher self-efficacy, a belief in their own ability to succeed. And that confidence, that efficacy, makes them more likely to seek out and actually achieve flow.
Right. Interest grabs your attention. Attention lets you get absorbed. It makes sense. Okay, so those are the internal factors, really crucial. What about the environment, the external stimuli, things the student or maybe the university can influence?
Well, the big one, the absolute precondition, seems to be time.
Time, just having enough of it.
And protecting it. The students who found flow, they consciously carved out dedicated time. One mentioned having a specific dedicated day just for study.
You can't get totally absorbed if you're trying to squeeze study in between emails and phone calls?
Exactly. And the study showed the contrast really clearly. About a quarter of the students who didn't experience flow cited distractions, phones buzzing, family demands, just daily life stuff as major barriers.
If your time is constantly broken up, flow is basically impossible.
Pretty much.
Okay, now here's something I found really surprising in the findings, something that challenges a lot of standard ideas about online teaching.
Ah, you mean the role of the tutor.
Exactly. With all this focus on the deep work happening kind of invisibly, did the official support systems, like the tutor, actually matter for achieving flow?
It's fascinating, isn't it? The data showed that while having a good tutor relationship and being satisfied with the tutor was generally positive for, say, retention, it didn't seem to affect whether these participants actually experienced flow.
So flow is more of a solitary state, independent of the instructor.
That's what it looks like. It's about that deep concentration, which seems to happen regardless of the tutor interaction. In fact, get this, one student who did report flow actually described having quite negative experiences with their tutor, said they felt there was no real care factor.
Wow. So all the flow experiences happened when the student was alone, basically, prepping for assessments.
That's right. It suggests flow can be completely independent of the student's relationship with the instructor or the university's formal support structure.
Okay, so if the tutor or the institutional support wasn't the key external factor, what was?
Well, the study really highlighted the importance of a different kind of network, an external one, outside the university system entirely.
What kind of network?
Professional colleagues from work, maybe family members who had also done tertiary study, or even just informal study buddies.
And these weren't just for, like, comparing notes on the assignment.
No, it seemed much more emotional than that.
Oh.
It was driven by this real need to share the excitement, the positive feeling of learning something new.
Ah, right. Like the buzz you get.
Exactly. Students actually said things like, I need to release that excitement that I found out something. Or they were thinking about how excited I have been to tell colleagues what I've learned.
So these outside networks helped nurture the interest and curiosity that maybe sparked the flow state in the first place.
It seems that way. They provide that validation and shared enthusiasm.
Which brings us neatly to the actual tasks that generated flow. Where did this rare state typically occur? What were people doing?
It almost always happened during assessment tasks. But not just any assessment. It had to be authentic.
Authentic meaning, like real-world practice.
Yeah, tasks that simulated what they actually do or would do in their professional lives. They weren't just, writing summaries of chapters.
The study had examples, right? Like
Yeah.
visualizing scenarios.
Mm-hmm. One student talked about visualizing a classroom situation, a little future movie sitting in the back of my head.
Hmm.
Another found flow working on an assignment about phonics and reading, which connected to a long-standing personal interest.
So real application, personal connection.
Definitely. And contrast that with how they felt about some of the standard weekly learning tasks.
How did they feel about those?
Pretty low value, generally.
Hmm.
One described them as feeling like a kid doing some work and you get a tick and put a stamp on it.
Roach. So those tasks lacked the right level of challenge or relevance or maybe clear goals needed to trigger that deep absorption.
Seems likely they just didn't have the ingredients for flow.
And this is where that autotelic idea comes back in, isn't it, with the authentic assessments?
Yes, exactly. Think about it. An assessment usually starts as an extrinsic motivator, right? You do it to get the grade.
Sure.
But the study found that for these flow-inducing tasks, the deep absorption actually transformed the motivation. It created an activity-related incentive.
Meaning the task itself became the reward.
Precisely. The activity became autotelic. Because it mirrored their job or perfectly matched their skills and challenged them, the process of doing it was enjoyable.
So they weren't just focused on the grade anymore.
The desire shifted. They actually wanted to repeat the activity just for the experience of doing it. The achievement goal kind of gave way to this pure, process-based, intrinsically rewarding learning.
Okay, let's try and pull these threads together then. For you, the learner listening to this, what are the key takeaways?
Well, first, this deep dive really confirms that flow in online learning is pretty rare, and it seemed to depend heavily on those internal factors we talked about.
Right. Your prior experience, being self-directed, having that confidence or self-efficacy, and critically being able to really focus your attention.
And second, when it does happen, it's often during those deep, authentic assessment tasks.
And it relies a lot on supportive networks outside the course, colleagues, family, study buddies, rather than necessarily the tutor or the official platform.
So the implication for you listening is pretty significant, I think. First, recognize that your best, deepest engagement, cognitive and emotional, might be totally invisible to the university's tracking systems.
Don't just chase the metrics they can easily count. Chase that feeling of flow itself.
And you probably need to be really conscious about protecting your study time, carving out undisturbed blocks.
And actively build those external support networks, people you can share your learning excitement with.
Which leaves us with a final, quite provocative thought to chew on.
Okay.
If the strongest predictors of flow are things like prior industry experience and high self-efficacy things you bring with you to the course, well, institutions face a bit of a paradox, don't they?
How so?
They can't exactly mandate prior experience, but deep engagement seems to really rely on it.
Yeah.
If those internal factors have to be right for flow to even be possible.
Then how much of the success of online learning depends less on the fancy platform or even the teacher?
And more on your pre-existing life circumstances, your background, your job, and maybe most importantly, your personal ability to control your own attention.
So the question for you as a learner becomes, what strategies should you be prioritizing right now to actively train your attention, to build that internal readiness for achieving flow in your own studies?